can't see the outside. But white lies turn to purple elephants. How many times will I have to tell you it? I hope you know how to live with it, cause it's not going away. Don't try, don't try, don't. White lies turn to purple elephants. Don't try, you'll become irrelevant. You can't train a purple elephant, give it a name and try to lock it away. But how can I take you seriously? You live with purple elephants. You think I'm being dramatic, it's the habit that'll drive you away. Yeah.
Hello there, and you are there, and I am here, and of course this is Killin time, episode 24. A quick little extra episode. I'm actually in the middle of editing other stuff, but I needed to kind of get a couple of things down before it's too late, and it's dead. That happens with a lot of stuff. However, today I want to look at the last TikTok appearance by Sandra and some information she was spewing on that. I think it's the best way I can put it. And really quite recently, only I think odd time of recording it would be yesterday, there was an article released by Jane Hamilton, a reporter who is targeted by Luke's army. So I'm not going to look at the actual report itself, but I'm going to go over a couple of things with that. As I say, tackle a little bit of Sandra Lean's latest appearance on TikTok, where she sat down and answered some questions and lied. There you go, that's spoilers. But we'll get into that at the end. There is something else I want to cover actually very quickly, but I'll do that at the end. And yeah, let's get on with the first one, huh? So, there was an article put out by Jane Hamilton. I'll link it in the comments below, just to have a little look through about the kind of treatment, abuse, threats that she's received from Luke's army. This is something that's went on for quite a while in terms of, well, it happens daily, honestly, but I'm going back years, where Scott Forbes targeted Jane, in my opinion, and I think probably in a lot of people's opinions if they're paying attention, in his, using my big bunny coat, big bunny ears here, his book. In that he decided to target one particular reporter, that being Jane, and decide that somehow the world was against Luke Mitchell because of this one particular person. In it as well, he always complains about the Daily Record, a paper that's Glaswegian. Firstly, the thing that I would want to just say right off before I forget is, the Glasgow newspaper with an Edinburgh story, there's a lot of mishmash here. Now, does Scott Forbes know that half the information that he spreads is wrong? Probably. But at the end of the day, that's his narrative that he wants to spin. And the book's full of lies. Absolutely, we've covered lots in here, and we could go through them all again. Right from his adult parties and everything else. The guy just is a fantasist. Absolute fantasist. And a moron as well. And I'll go on to explain why in a little bit. However, the thing is, Scott Forbes tries to tie Jane Hamilton in with the Daily Record, and he blames the two as, kind of one, making it that the two are intrinsically linked in Luke's perceived guilt by the public. The problem with it all is that the timeline, or if you would look at Jane Hamilton's kind of career in terms of where she's been and what papers she's written for, from 2000 to 2004 she was actually at the Edinburgh Evening News. So the fact that that is an Edinburgh newspaper as well, and that's kind of at the time of roundabout when everything happened, 2003 to 2005 for the conviction. However, of course, it's the Daily Record. It's not the Edinburgh Evening News, it's the Daily Record. But what I would like to say, and I'll put it right here, right now, watch Mr. Forbes' story change if he catches wind of anything that I'm saying right now and gets a better idea of actual detail. Because he doesn't know the detail, he doesn't look into the detail. It serves him no good because of the lie he's telling anyway. He needs it to suit what he's saying. So as I say, from 2000 to 2004, it would be the Edinburgh Evening News, which I hate to do your work for you, Scott, but it would actually make more sense, considering it's the Edinburgh paper, and, you know, the murder happened in Edinburgh. But I'm not here to create your lies for you, I'm sure you'll make your own. But, I mean, from 2004 to 2007, it was the Sunday Mail. Again, not the Daily Record. I believe she done some work from the Sun as well, but it's not until 2009 where we really have the Daily Record involved. And even then, that's, you know, a mid-pace. It's not, there's freelancing in that respect. I believe you're looking at 2014 becoming more permanent and going on. I mean, the thing is as well, which I would like to point out as well, and you angry typers, because there will be angry typers, especially if any of your cult point this out to you, Mr. Forbes. I hope Mr. Forbes is listening. If you are listening, Mr. Forbes, hiya. Anyway, as I was saying, I challenged the Luke Mitchell supporters, the Luke's army, Scott Forbes, all the rest of them. I challenge you to find a timeline for the articles that Jane Hamilton has written about Luke Mitchell. Now, I believe there's a good number of years where there was nothing written at all. So from 2021, which I believe is the thing that they always like to talk about, the 10 hard facts and blah 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 and everything else, I believe that's obviously where we can take it from. But let's go back. And when else did Jane Hamilton write about Luke Mitchell? Guess. I'll give you 3 options. 2016, 2006, or 2010. Give you a second. That's right, if you said 2006, you would be absolutely right. So there's a break of 15 years in between any kind of articles about Luke Mitchell by Jane Hamilton. Now, I'm not defending reporters in any way, but the abuse that's thrown towards her by Luke's army is just vile. And it's been shown over the last 24 hours, because there are a certain amount of people who agree that this behaviour is abhorrent. It is disgusting. Now, I will go into the fact that Scott Forbes has doubled down on this, by the way, and I'll show you. That's what I mean by the moron comment. But he's not alone. So, in some of the conversations I've had online, and I know this is anecdotal, but the people arguing with me have then went on to tag Jane Hamilton as some kind of gotcha moment. Now, granted, these people aren't the most intelligent of people. In fact, there's no intelligence with them at all, but that's a different matter. But at the same time, they're not even learning their lesson. They're not a lesson, that sounds wrong. They're not learning from their mistakes, essentially. If you read something or hear something and then instantly get your back up about it, that's a guilty conscience. If the shoe fits, wear the shoe, find the other shoe, use the shoes. They're your shoes. If you feel that you hear something and then think, oh, what do you mean by that? Then you're guilty of it. And I think the fact that they can't, there's no self-reflection at the end of the day. Someone has put a legitimate complaint up, things that have been, and actually, that's before I forget, one of the big things that, you know, Luke's army use is this a small article written by Professor David Wilson. I've got opinions about Professor David Wilson, but I'm not getting into that here. But about him saying, obviously, that he didn't think there was enough evidence to take Luke to court. Now, at the time, you know, I didn't say anything then, because at the end of the day, the information that Professor Wilson was given was actually from Sandra Lean and Scott Forbes. So that's, that's kind of tying your hands behind your back to begin with. But the reality is, when he read Jane Hamilton's piece, or saw it itself, shared it, and actually hoped that the police Scotland got involved. Now, to back this campaign and then do that, that's a bit of a conflict of interest. Well, conflict, a bit of contradiction in terms, and say that. But at the end of the day, I think if he was to look into this a wee bit more now, he might have a different opinion, especially with the transcripts available, which weren't when he gave his opinion. So, even who they would hold up as, idols for their cause, just go against their behaviour and don't like it. But that's not stopped them, as I say. So, we'll have a look at some tweets by Scott. I'm not going to read all of these out. I'll put a couple on screen at the same time, leave them up for a bit so you can read them. But if anything, this sent him into a spiral, an absolute meltdown, because he runs the risk as well. Obviously, we've looked at a timeline there for Jane Hamilton's employment. It doesn't match up with this whole her in the Daily Record. And I mean, the timelines for when she wrote the pieces, 2006 to 2021. Come on, that is... I don't know, he's not a lawyer, is he? He's attorney at law, that's what he is. No, attorney at flaw. Attorney at flaw. Well, that's quite a tongue twister, actually. But it's flawed logic. Flawgic, if you will. It's Flawgic. And that's because he doesn't look into it. He's not got the dates to back it up. He's not got the facts to back it up. He's got nothing. And even when it comes to things like, transcripts, he starts arguing against the legitimacy of that. It's absolutely ridiculous. But I hope that, I don't want to go on too much about this, because I do want to talk about the TikTok appearance from Sandra Lean. But I hope a timeline here puts this a little bit more succinctly and shows you the Flawgic in Scott's argument. Jane Hamilton and Daily Record are not intrinsically linked. They weren't intrinsically linked for all these 20 odd years or so that this has happened. And I mean, her own history in terms of the articles she's written shows you that she is not guilty of all these things Scott Forbes would like to make out. It's a good story though, but the thing is, Scott Forbes needs a villain in every area. So he needs a policeman villain, he needs a reporter villain, he needs a family oh my god, that's put a song in my head.
He drinks a whiskey drink, he drinks a vodka drink, he drinks a lager drink, he drinks a cider drink.
He needs to place all these little kind of chess pieces everywhere else for his big conspiracy. It is a conspiracy. Scott Forbes has made it up himself though, and if you're in any doubt that he's told lies, then go watch the quick cuts video that I done, where I can succinctly put it in under 2 minutes that Scott Forbes is an absolute bullshitter. However, I hope this is, as I say, puts everything in a wee timeline here. This is debunked, gone. This idea that one reporter or one newspaper was guilty of all these things, it was just a boogeyman for Scott Forbes. And if you were under any illusion that it was anything else otherwise, you're being played. You're a mark for his carny, and you bought in. So you can argue with me in the comments, but there is no denying, and I challenge I challenge people to find a conclusive history of all the articles written by Jane Hamilton about Luke Mitchell and prove that I'm not telling the truth. Do it. You know you can't.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
So, quick education of the angry typers and crazy conspiracy theorists and the Flawgic that is Scott Forbes. Let's move on to Sandra Lean's latest TikTok appearance, and we could go through the whole thing. It's a good 50 odd minutes, but I'm just going to pick out a couple of things, or we'll be here all day and I have to edit this, and no. So let's look at a couple of quick lies, let's look at a couple of reinventions, let's look at some strange ass behaviour, and then a quick other thing at the end, wrap up. Yes, let's go.
Ask you first, just to tell everyone a little bit about who you are and kind of what your job is, what you kind of do.
I'm a criminologist.
No, you ain't.
But for the last almost 21 years, the main case that I've worked on has been Luke's case. I do work on other cases.
Oh, no, you don't.
I have done much more in the past, getting to the age where it's time to slow down and take on a bit less work. But essentially what I do is mostly people come to me and say that a loved one has been wrongly convicted, and I ask them to let me see everything they have, all their information.
This one was invented by a writer.
I am not going to lie, I could do that for the whole entire video, but I think that's lazy editing on my part. I do want to, however, focus on a couple of points itself, but we'll do them kind of quickish, because obviously, as I said, we don't want to make this too long. So let's get on with the first one. I'll come back and tell you the issues that I have with it. I'm sure if you have any, you can add them to the comments below as well, but let's look at the first one.
I think the first thing that struck me about him was how slight he was.
Yeah.
He wasn't a big lad or anything like that. He was a kind of skinny 14-year-old.
Yeah.
And the initial rumour around here was that Jodie had been clubbed to death.
Right, okay.
With something like a golf club or something like that.
Okay.
So I'm looking at this skinny kid thinking, alright, that would have taken some doing. Very, very polite, very well spoken, very well mannered, and basically shell-shocked.
What the fuck is she talking about? The rumour was that Jodie Jones was clubbed to death with a golf club. Absolute nonsense. From the start it was known that she was killed, and it wasn't beaten to death. She was known it was stab wounds, I believe. The idea that she didn't know, and by that point as well, when she goes on about her involvement, it didn't come right off the bat. It came, a while after it. So by that point, the local rumour should have been well out her head. And a rumour, could anyone in the comments, can back up this rumour? Has anybody heard of this one before? Because this is the first I've heard about it, and I've been watching a lot of these appearances, I think I'll put it. But there was something else there as well. I don't know if you noticed it. She made a point to point out that Luke Mitchell was slight. Now, what's the opposite of that? Stocky. Let's just bury the lead. At the end of the day, she's trying to make a total difference, because she will, want to talk about Stocky Man at some point. So we've got to make the distinction between Luke and the Stocky Man, stocky guy. But the thing is as well, which I'll just put here as well, I'll move on to the next point, but the first mention of a stocky guy, or stocky man, sorry, comes from Luke Mitchell himself during his police questioning on the night they discovered Jodie Jones' body, where he talks about two people he had saw on Roansdyke Path, both round about his height, 5'7", with long greasy hair, strangely enough, but were stocky. So there's your first appearance of the stocky man. There's no great emphasis put on those tales by Luke's Army, though. They're only interested in one, and that's because Scott Forbes has spun a tale out of it. But getting sidetracked with that one. This is absolute nonsense. Clubbed to death with a golf club. What the fuck are you talking about? Absolute nonsense.
It was seeing the evidence in black and white, seeing that the witnesses who were with him looking for Jodie when she was found, how their statements changed to implicate him, all three of them. So at first, everybody said the dog jumped up at the wall and the dog reacted, the dog alerted, and that's what led Luke to believe there was something behind the wall, all of them. A month later, and this is a strange bit, they all changed their account. The 3 other searchers changed their account, but they all changed it to the same thing, which is that the dog did nothing. And Luke just randomly decides to climb over the wall and immediately finds Jodie, so that the police could use that to say he led them to the body.
This is a classic from both Sandra Lean and Scott Forbes, but it's a twisting of the truth, and the fact that the transcripts are out there it's baffling to me that Sandra Lean keeps this one up. So let's just look at it in this way. If you look at Stephen Kelly or Jane Jones or anybody else's, that's the ones that they point out essentially. So in terms of changing statements, if we look at those statements themselves, there's questioning where they're shown their original police questioning that by the court itself, and they agree that if it's in their original statement, it must have happened the way it did because that's what they said. Now, in those statements, both everyone says how the dog reacted, blah blah blah, V in the wall. The difference is, and the difference between the search trio, as the Luke's Army like to call them, and Luke's story, is that Luke said the dog reacted further along the wall. So Luke had said and stated that they walked along the wall, and Mia, his German Shepherd, had reacted at the wall close to kind of where Jodie Jones' body would be situated, but on the other side of the wall. And he doubled back and then went over the V. That's where the difference is. There's no changed statements, there's just a difference in what actually happened. This is a lie. And, I mean, this is one of the big ones that Luke's Army swallow and repeat, but you're not paying attention to the facts. Luke has a different story from what happened. No version of events were changed. They differed from Luke Mitchell, and that's the important fact here, and that's what shows that he was being untruthful, because 3 other people told the same story about what happened, and his was vastly different. And that goes into how Mia tracks and whatnot, which again, air scent, trail scent dogs. What happens when an air molecule hits something downwind? It rises. It doesn't come back down. That's an impossibility. So, yeah, it's the whole. We'll have to do something on that. But basically, it doesn't make sense in terms of the dog tracking and even Luke's story. But the dog thing just is. It's not based in reality.
It doesn't make any sense. I wish there was sense. Where did all this sense go?
No, and this is the bit that I want to clarify. Many long conversations about the consequences of doing that.
Okay.
Right? Because there are people out there saying, I advised Luke badly to put these out, and as a result of these, we got him an extra 3 to 5 years added to his sentence.
Okay.
Luke was adamant he wanted these to go out. So we did these conversations, recorded them, and put them out as a 4-part series on YouTube called The Sound of Silence. And they came and got him and took him back into solitary and said that he'd misused the prison communication system by using those phones, knowing he was being recorded. Well, actually, he's perfectly entitled to do that as a prisoner maintaining his innocence. He's done nothing wrong.
Well, actually, it's against the law for any person in prison to speak to a journalist without prior consent from the authorities, and especially to have anything recorded in secret and passed out. At the time, Sandra Lean decided she was a journalist to try and find a loophole around it, but even then, it was illegal. We did an episode on that. I will go back and put on screen what episode it is. Way back. Went through the law as well, in detail. I knew it. Sandra Lean actually says there at the start of that, if you notice, they'd had long conversations about the consequences. Because of course the consequences, because she knew it was illegal. Well, if she'd googled it, she would have knew it was illegal. In fact, common sense would tell you it was illegal. Otherwise, every criminal in prison would be on YouTube right now talking about their innocence. Wake yourself up.
You've got the support of David Wilson, haven't you, as well?
Yes. he's not in full support. He has put out a couple of articles saying he can't see how this ever came to trial at all. He's seen no evidence that suggests Luke had anything.
Just putting this here to show you how very non-committal that is, and how it takes Sandra all of her brain power to actually come up with an answer. Because in reality, Professor David Wilson wrote something in the paper, and she says that he didn't see any evidence that would mean Luke should be taken to court. He didn't see any evidence. In the same way, Ms. Lean, that none of your followers have seen the evidence that convicted him, because you hide it from them.
How's Luke's mum at the moment?
She's as well as can be expected in the circumstances. Luke prefers us not to discuss his mum's for her own privacy. Yeah,
perfect. That's fine.
The worst piece of hypocrisy I've ever seen in my life, and it actually was a gasp when I heard Sandra Lean say that. Don't talk about Corinne Mitchell. Luke doesn't like it, which is kind of weird. But given the amount of information and things that Sandra Lean has said, not only about Jodie Jones, the murder victim, but her family, her loved ones, the people involved, and somehow Corinne Mitchell sits on high in an ivory tower not to be touched. Let's not forget Corinne Mitchell's demise, so to speak, came in many, many forms. One of them being responsible for a man's death for selling a dodgy caravan. I mean, this is not some great Mother Teresa type figure who was, lambasted and crucified. It was a woman who tried to get her son out of a murder charge and failed, and then actually caused a man's death. And I'm sorry, but the idea that we have to keep Corinne Mitchell out of everyone's mouth, Will Smith, Chris Rock style, but then everyone else is free game when it's re-victimising the family of a murdered schoolgirl. I mean, what planet is this woman on? I bet you there's loads of nice crystals.
So a lot of people ask, whenever I do the Luke case, people always say the one reason they always still think he's guilty is because of the change in the alibi from the brother. Can you explain that to us? Because obviously we're just seeing like what's in the media or what's on the documentary, but what is the actual truth of that?
Essentially, the police did to his brother what they tried to do with Luke, and that was try to break him. They wouldn't accept a word he said. They kept refusing the line. They kept saying it wasn't true. His brother was trying to say on the stand, he was trying to explain that at trial and say they wouldn't accept honest answers. They kept saying, we're not accepting that, we're not accepting that. The prosecution, the man who's married to our top legal person, without warning, slapped photos of Jodie's body in front of him. No warning. Bad. That's why we need the truth from you. And his brother fell apart, and I've seen the crime scene photographs. I defy anybody not to fall apart, having them thrust under the nose with no warning. And what happened after that is the prosecutor kept putting it to him. Could it have been that you were doing this? Is it possible that you were doing that? And the brother was agreeing in complete shock. He wasn't saying he did or he was. He was agreeing that he could have been. And then that has been, over the years, that has been turned into. His brother admitted he was watching porn and utter rubbish. He did not. He did not. He agreed with the prosecutor that it was possible.
Okay, that really does clear it up, because I've always...
Another blatant lie. If we go back to episode 1 of Transcribed, we'll see that there was plenty of lies in there. First one, the idea that the photos of the crime scene were thrown down without warning is not true. If we go back and look at the transcripts again, it was explained long before any book was opened what they was going to be looking at. But it's a deflection in terms of, she then talks about, I've seen the crime scene photos. Which she probably has, but then again, there's question marks over that as well, because she's just so full of shit. But the alibi, the porn, I mean, again, he admitted more than once that that's what he was doing and that's what he intended to do. He changed his statement. This whole idea that they wouldn't accept answers, we need an answer, we won't accept that. Of course, because he kept changing his story and they wanted to get it definite. Again, it's not a hardship, it's not a bad thing. You would expect it of the police. But this is just a blatant lie. And this was pointed out by a lot of actual Luke's army. The fact that they're sick of Sandra Lean lying about this, saying it's pop-ups or there wasn't porn and all the rest of it. The transcripts are there, Miss Lean. Just stop lying about it. You might actually get more supporters if you start telling some truth.
The sister's boyfriend, he was so precise. He said, it's a big dog, it was an Alsatian, its head was higher than the V. Now that's vivid.
Yeah, that is.
And then he gets to trial, he's like, I don't remember doing anything.
This one was invented by a writer.
I think there's another 5 full or partial profiles from men that are unidentified to this day. We don't know who they are. And then, of course, we discovered with the evidence construction, we discovered a whole pile of samples that had been tested as far as, yes, they've tested positive for semen, and then they've gone no further. So they didn't bother to find out who it was.
Samples tested positive for semen, but they didn't check who it was. Nonsense. And 5 full male DNA profiles that are unidentified. So, major problems with that. The people that are close to the case that Scott Forbes likes to say are suspects, that can't match their DNA then. So it's another 5 people? Whole different 5 people. Yeah? So how many have you got involved now? Potential 10. What's happening here? This is just muddying the waters for the sake of muddying the waters. At the end of the day, 5 male profiles that weren't tested. One thing I'll say again, which I keep on saying, if that's the case, then Scott's main player and main suspect, Joseph Jones, is wiped straight out, given his familial DNA would match that of Jodie's to a very, very high percentage, because that's science. And the fact that your DNA is, the chances of your DNA being similar to someone else's is 1 in what? What did we say? 1 in 200 billion. Pseudoscience and nonsense from a supposed doctor. Honestly, Dr. Pepper.
Connections you can see between any other cases that have happened that have similar kind of markings or MOs where you thought, hang on, this is very similar to Jodie, or have any of the suspects who have been kind of brought up gone on to commit other violent crime?
Not of that nature, no.
Okay.
And there are other murders other names in Scotland with similarities.
Okay.
And this is where it becomes really difficult, because other people have been convicted for those.
Yeah.
And yet there's a couple of them that are incredibly similar to what happened to Jodie, right down to the woodland area, tucked in beside a tree, the stuff, and really, really similar. But somebody else got convicted for it, and somebody else got convicted for one. So,
name them. Name one of these cases that's so similar, Ms. Lee. Notice you'd make a habit of doing that. You never actually go into the particulars. With a lot of things, I'm not going to think of all the examples here, but this one stands out. If there is similar cases with but shock horror, people are killed and hidden in woods, by the way. Is that a similarity? Because that's just stupid. But throat stuff. Was there similarities in all the injuries? Again, this is nonsense. The other people have been convicted of other crimes because they committed them, Ms. Lane. Name one. Luke's army like to think of Robert Green's as a suspect because he was a known killer. But, I mean, come on. If you're so confident, then let's talk about some of the other, at least some of the scenes, at least some of the instances. Give some examples. You can't, because this is just nonsense. But some people buy it. Some people buy it.
Someone's saying, does Luke's dad and brother support him?
They are not any part of the public support campaign, and for
That's
good
fine.
reason for themselves.
Both Shane and Philip Mitchell have nothing to do with any campaign and don't back Luke's innocence. Ms. Lee?
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Have you thought about taking Luke's case to CrimeCon?
We nearly did.
Because
We
they
nearly
have
did,
such big impact.
But I think I was a couple of weeks too late with the inquiry.
Because it happens, obviously it happens
The
every year.
lady
The
that got back to me
London
said, "Oh, next year."
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again.
The London one is massive. I literally got a chance to go this year because of my channel. And some of the people's family who were there, like Kirsty, who fell, she was Scottish, who fell from the holiday, Benidorm. Her family were there, and they just had such a big impact, and so many people getting behind her. David Swindles was there, all the different people there, detectives.
Yeah, we, like I said, we did try to get them this year, but I was a little bit too late. I'd missed. There was so much going on, to be honest. I kind of missed that there was a deadline. But they have come back and given me dates for next year and said, get in by then.
Okay, well I'm gonna.
I think I can smell shite.
Now, I don't believe for a second that Sandra Lean even knew that existed. However, I know, and I was, I was informed, by someone down south, that in Birmingham, for the CCRC, the Crime Con, which, I mean, the only con I know is like Comic-Con, so hopefully it's people aren't going around dressed as their favourite murderer. Loads of Ted Bundys and Hannibal Lecters, depending on who's Fred West, depending on who is in fashion. But Sandra did have a representative at the Birmingham Crime Con, and that was wee Danny, the admin that we spoke about before. Ventured down. Sandra Lean didn't go with her, which I find is a bit odd, don't you? If one of the campaign people can go and have a space, why was Sandra Lean not there? Well, the thing is, Danny actually done something else. She posted something on Sandra's wall on Facebook, and as you can see, that's probably not going to be very welcomed. The masses can't see mummy and daddy fighting. So I know, and I have it on good authority as well, actually, that I suppose I can kind of say, I believe she's no longer an admin for the group. I believe she's gone. Which I find odd behaviour now. Is that because she went somewhere where she wasn't supposed to without Sandra's approval? Is that why Sandra didn't go? Who knows? Was it the posting that on Sandra's wall to let the rest of the masses see that mummy and daddy have fallen out? Or is it another reason? Because at the end of the day, Sandra Lean does like to cycle through these admins and people and use and abuse them for what they are good for. Maybe some editing skills, maybe some networking skills, maybe like Danny, who's studying criminology. The only real criminologist in the room has been turfed. Because Sandra Lean, as I say, is a user and abuser. So that was kind of the last thing that I wanted to cover there, all wrapped into one. But that's it. This, as I say, I could have went through a lot with the Sandra Lean's last appearance on TikTok, but we don't want to be here all day. Let's make these a wee bit shorter where we can. So, opinions and thoughts, guys. not. Well, let's start with Sandra. I mean, what do you think of her last appearance on TikTok? What do you think of the blatant lies that even when the transcripts are out there, she's still clinging on to this falsehood and this misinformation, pulling the wool over newcomers' eyes who are shocked and appalled, when reality is if they took 5 minutes to even look at what she's saying, it's absolute nonsense. And also, what do we think is Scott Forbes' behaviour and Luke's army's behaviour in terms of how they've been treating Jane Hamilton? At the end of the day, I think I've proven there that that's unfounded. The media are what the media are. There was plenty of people covering the Luke Mitchell case, and there will be plenty going forward. They're not all Jane Hamilton, as much as Scott Forbes and his pals like to make out that everyone on Twitter is Jane Hamilton. Anyway, but what advice to Mr. Forbes, if I could give him it: build a bridge, get the fuck over it. Yeah. But apart from that, what do you guys think about all of the recent, shall we say, goings on that I spoke about in the video? As always, guys, thank you very much for listening to this. Thank you very much for everything in terms of the stuff you share with me. We are on X. I am on Facebook. I'm actually on TikTok, but I've never actually done anything with that. But Facebook has been a bit abandoned. It's kind of like the wasteland. I should get back to it, but I'm so bad at social media. But yeah, you can send the stuff on X. That's probably where you're best getting us. And don't forget to give us a little sarcastic thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to keep up. Hit a little notification bell. You got another episode of Transcribed coming up. That's probably going to be split into 3 with Corinne Mitchell's testimony, though. Just give you guys advance warning. Very long videos. But yes, leave a comment down below, but do not be a Derek. And whatever you do, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
White lies turn to purple elephants. Don't try, you'll become irrelevant. You can't train a purple elephant. Give it a name and try to lock it away. But how can I take you seriously? You live with purple elephants. You think I'm being dramatic? It's the habit that'll drive you away.